Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is U.S. Immigration Attorney Hardam Trapathy from Trip Law. Today, I want to speak with you about changes in immigration law and policy that occurred from the first administration of Trump to the new administration currently present. And we want to walk you through what all changes have occurred and how does this impact your case overall in immigration. So we're going to actually speak today about what remains unchanged, what actually is in effect and has been implemented, and what isn't actually in effect. So we're actually going to go through these various policy changes so that way you can be best prepared for your immigration case. So first of all, what remains unchanged, right? So let's just start with the naturalization exam, because we're seeing a lot of people applying for naturalization here at our law firm, and we want to show you what remains unchanged with respect to that. So currently what remains unchanged is that the 2008 version of the naturalization test is still in force, meaning that they are trying to propose harder changes to make it more difficult, but these have not been truly fully implemented yet. But it is in process. Now, there's also controversial changes that are occurring, like the Birthright Citizenship Executive Order, which is currently being challenged in courts. So the future status of this Birthright Citizenship Executive Orders is still uncertain. Now, we're also going to talk about what hasn't been actually changed or is partially implemented in 2025 under the new naturalization citizenship changes under the current administration, specifically taking into account Executive Order 14160, which is about the birthright citizenship, and then also neighborhood checks. So this tells you what's actually in effect, what's kind of blocked, and what's still under litigation in court. So what is in effect, right? Well, they have been starting to do more neighborhood investigations and neighborhood checks for naturalization applicants. So as of August 22nd of 2025, USCIS has actually officially ended this waiver of the neighborhood investigations under the INA law. And instead, they're actually going to carry them on a case-by-case basis based on the applicant's background. So it's something that you should definitely call our law firm at 863-599-6735, and we'll walk you through the complexities involving that. Furthermore, we actually are encouraging applicants to proactively submit letters from neighbors, employers, coworkers, et cetera, basically, right? To basically help USCIS decide whether a neighborhood check is even needed and if at all possible, be waived. Because if the evidence is lacking and you don't actually provide the proper evidence to the government, then USCIS can then continue these neighborhood investigations and conduct their investigations, which will only make your case more difficult. So under the current law and policy, it is actually now in effect with respect to these neighborhood checks, and it's part of USCIS's adjudication process when they're actually looking at your case and adjudicating your case. And so USCIS has that new policy manual and memos that lay out kind of the process of how this will work. It's not really universally applied, though. It's on a case-by-case basis, and every officer has the discretion and the possibility even to back their discretion up by doing these actual checks. So be very careful with that. What isn't actually fully in effect or what's been blocked or under legal challenges in court is this Birthright Citizenship Executive Order, where they're actually now trying to remove birthright citizenship, and it denies that automatic citizenship under the 14th Amendment for certain children that are born in the U.S. whose parents are either unlawfully present, allegedly, or they're temporarily present and are not either a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident. So a lot of courts federally have issued preliminary injunctions that are blocking that enforcement nationwide, and there's been case law on that regarding whether this nationwide injunction is even legal. So there's a lot going on in the litigation space, and there's been a lot of lawsuits on that. The Supreme Court has actually ruled on the universal nationwide injunction on June 27th of 2025 in a case called Trump v. Cassa, where the U.S. Supreme Court basically ruled that not on whether the executive order was constitutional, but on the remedy itself, like whether district courts can actually issue these universal nationwide injunctions and whether they can block everybody from issuing these, or whether there's actually limited injunctions covering specific issues. So these are things that are very important. Now, the court has decided that universal injunctions are generally not allowed unless it's necessary, right, to give that relief to specific parties in a suit. So that means that prior nationwide blocks are now in question. So the current status of this executive order, July 2025 and onward, under the Cassa decision, is basically going to potentially go into effect in jurisdictions where the executive order isn't currently blocked for those specific relevant parties. But because many preliminary injunctions are still in place, and there's state cases going on, the implementation part of it is a little patchy, right? It's a little shot because right now they're still figuring it out. There's a lot of class action lawsuits, of course, trying to seek broader injunctions on this. and courts have issued injunctions in those cases as necessary. So how does this affect your case? Right now things are in limbo, but it's still going through the process, but you want to best be prepared for your case all the time when going into these hearings for naturalization, to make sure that you have a better shot at winning your case. Now, there's also these naturalization test changes, right, that could be in effect. Based on what they're doing is they're trying to propose harder versions of the naturalization test, specifically with the civics and English portion part of it. And it's been proposed, but it hasn't really yet been fully implemented or officially adopted as law. So the old version of the 2008 is still in use, but that doesn't mean it could change here in the near future. And we'll create videos for you so you can stay up to date with respect to these laws. Now, what do you need to look at moving forward, right? It's always good to look at whether the courts will rule on the constitutionality of the executive orders. You also want to look at remedy issues. You want to see how USCIS will implement neighborhood checks in practice. You want to monitor that and just be careful with respect to those investigations. And then we'll also see if Congress passes legislation to see if they're going to either affirm or reject these changes. And you're also going to want to follow kind of what's going on in the Supreme Court on how they handle these class action or state lawsuits with respect to blocking that executive order in those specific jurisdictions. So a lot going on in the law, a lot going on in the policy, but we here at Trip Law will walk you through that, and we look forward to working with you. We hope that this nugget here today that we shared with you will show you the complexities of the law and how it can actually genuinely affect your case. So you don't want to tackle this alone. It's always best to get an attorney so that you're on the right track moving forward. And we do wish you the best of luck with your immigration journey. So thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you. Have a great day.